21. On the edge of the orchard, the Chester's Mill exiles are having a picnic lunch when gunfire breaks out. Not from 119, where the visiting continues, but to the southwest. "That's out on Little Bitch Road," Piper says. "God, I wish we had some binoculars." But they need none to see the yellow bloom that opens when the Meals on Wheels truck explodes. Twitch is eating deviled chicken with a plastic spoon.
"I don't know what's going on down there, but that's the radio station for sure," he says.
Rusty grabs Barbie's shoulder. "That's where the propane is. They stockpiled it to make drugs. That's where the propane is." Barbie has one moment of clear, premonitory terror. One moment when the worst is still ahead. Then, 4 miles distant, a brilliant white spark flicks the hazy sky, like a stroke of lightning that goes up instead of down. A moment later, a titanic explosion hammers a hole straight through the center of the day. A red ball of fire blots out first the WCIK tower, then the trees behind it, and then the whole horizon as it spreads north and south. The people on Black Ridge scream but are unable to hear themselves over the vast grinding building roar as 80 pounds of plastic explosive and 10,000 gallons of propane undergo an explosive change. They cover their eyes and stagger backward, stepping on their sandwiches and spilling their drinks. Thurston snatches Alice and Aiden into his arms, and for a moment Barbie sees his face against the blackening sky. The long and terrified face of a man observing the literal gates of hell swing open and the ocean of fire waiting just beyond. "We have to go back to the farmhouse," Barbie yells. Julia is clinging to him, crying. Beyond her is Joe McClatchy, trying to help his weeping mother to her feet. These people are going nowhere, at least for a while. To the southwest, where most of Little Bitch Road will, within the next 3 minutes, cease to exist, the yellowy blue sky is turning black, and Barbie has time to think with perfect calm. Now we're under the magnifying glass. The blast shatters every window in the mostly deserted downtown, sends shutters soaring, knocks telephone poles askew, rips doors from their hinges, flattens mailboxes. Up and down Main Street, car alarms go off. To Big Jim Rennie and Carter Thibodeau, it feels as if the conference room has been struck by an earthquake. The TV is still on. Wolf Blitzer is asking, in tones of real alarm, "What's that?" "Anderson Cooper, Candy Crowley, Chad Myers, Soledad O'Brien. Does anybody know what the hell that was? What's going on?" At the Dome, America's newest TV stars are looking around, showing the cameras only their backs as they shield their eyes and stare toward town. One camera pans up briefly, for a moment, disclosing a monstrous column of black smoke and swirling debris on the horizon. Carter gets to his feet. Big Jim grabs his wrist. "One quick look," Big Jim says, "to see how bad it is, then get your butt back down here. We may have to go to the fallout shelter." "Okay." Carter races up the stairs. Broken glass from the mostly vaporized front doors crunches beneath his boots as he runs down the hall. What he sees when he comes out on the steps is so beyond anything he has ever imagined that it tumbles him back into childhood again, and for a moment he freezes where he is, thinking, it's like the biggest, awfulest thunderstorm anyone ever saw, only worse. The sky to the west is a red-orange inferno surrounded by billowing clouds of deepest ebony. The air is already stenchy with exploded LP. The sound is like the roar of a dozen steel mills running at full blast. Directly above him, the sky is dark with fleeing birds. The sight of them, birds with nowhere to go, is what breaks Carter's paralysis. That, and the rising wind he feels against his face. There has been no wind in Chester's Mill for 6 days, and this one is both hot and vile, stinking of gas and vaporized wood. A huge smashed oak lands in Main Street, pulling down snarls of dead electrical cable. Carter flees back down the corridor. Big Jim is standing at the head of the stairs, his heavy face pale and frightened, and for once, irresolute. "Downstairs," Carter says. "Fallout shelter. It's coming. The fire's coming. And when it gets here, it's going to eat this town alive." Big Jim groans. "What did those idiots do?" Carter doesn't care. Whatever they did, it's done. If they don't move quickly, they will be done too. "Is there air purifying machinery down there, boss?" "Yes." "Hooked to the Jenny?" "Yes, of course." "Thank Christ for that. Maybe we got a chance." Helping Big Jim down the stairs to make him move more quickly, Carter only hopes they don't cook alive down there. The doors of Dipper's Roadhouse have been chocked open, but the force of the explosion breaks the chocks and sweeps the doors shut. The glass coughs inward, and several of the people standing at the back of the dance floor are cut. Henry Morrison's brother Whit suffers a slashed jugular. The crowd stampedes toward the doors, the big screen TV completely forgotten. They trample poor Whit Morrison as he lies dying in a spreading pool of his own blood. They hit the doors, and more people are lacerated as they push through the jagged openings. "Birds!" someone cries. "Ah, God! Look at all them birds!" But most of them look west instead of up. West, where burning doom is rolling down upon them below a sky that is now midnight black and full of poison air. Those who can run take a cue from the birds and begin trotting, jogging, or flat-out galloping straight down the middle of Route 117. Several others throw themselves into their cars, and there are multiple fender benders in the gravel parking lot where, once upon an antique time, Dale Barbara took a beating. Velma Winters gets into her old Datsun pickup and, after avoiding the demolition derby in the parking lot, discovers her right-of-way to the road is blocked by fleeing pedestrians. She looks right, at the Firestorm billowing toward them like some great burning dress, eating the woods between Little Bitch and downtown, and drives blindly ahead in spite of the people in her way. She strikes Carla Vensiano, who is fleeing with her infant in her arms. Velma feels the truck jounce as it passes over their bodies, and resolutely blocks her ears to Carla's shrieks as her back is broken and baby Stephen is crushed to death beneath her. All Velma knows is that she has to get out of here. Somehow, she has to get out. At the Dome, the reunions have been ended by an apocalyptic party crasher. Those on the inside have something more important than relatives to occupy them now. The giant mushroom cloud that's growing to the northwest of their position, rising on a muscle of fire already almost a mile high. The first feather of wind, the wind that has sent Carter and Big Jim fleeing for the fallout shelter, strikes them, and they cringe against the dome, mostly ignoring the people behind them. In any case, the people behind them are retreating. They're lucky. They can. Henrietta Clavard feels a cold hand wrap around hers. She turns and sees Petra Searles. Petra's hair has come loose from the clips that were holding it and hangs against her cheeks. "Got any more of that joy juice?" Petra asks, and manages a ghastly let's party smile. "Sorry, all out," Henrietta says. "Well, maybe it doesn't matter." "Hang on to me, honey," Henrietta says. "Just hang on to me. We're gonna be okay." But when Petra looks into the old woman's eyes, she sees no belief and no hope. The party's almost over. "Look, now. Look and see." 800 people are crammed against the dome, their heads tilted up and their eyes wide, watching as their inevitable end rushes toward them. Here are Johnny and Carrie Carver, and Bruce Yardley, who worked at Food City. Here is Tabby Morrell, who owns a lumber yard soon to be reduced to swirling ash, and his wife, Bonnie. Toby Manning, who clerked at the department store. Trina Cole and Donnie Barbeau. Wendy Goldstone with her friend and fellow teacher Ellen Vandestein. Bill Allnut, who wouldn't go get the bus, and his wife Sarah, who was screaming for Jesus to save her as she watches the oncoming fire. Here are Todd Wendelstadt and Manuel Ortega with their faces raised dumbly to the west where the world is disappearing in smoke. Tommy and Willow Anderson, who will never book another band from Boston into their roadhouse. See them all. A whole town with its back to an invisible wall. Behind them, the visitors go from backing up to retreat, and from retreat into full flight. They ignore the buses and pound straight down the highway toward Moughton. A few soldiers hold position, but most throw their guns down, tear after the crowd, and look back no more than Lot looked back at Sodom. Cox doesn't flee. Cox approaches the dome and shouts, "You! Officer in charge!" Henry Morrison turns, walks to the colonel's position, and braces his hands on a hard and mystic surface he can't see. Breathing has become difficult. Bad wind pushed by the firestorm hits the dome, swirls, then backdrafts toward the hungry thing that's coming. A black wolf with red eyes. Here, on the Moughton town line, is the lamb fold where it will feed. "Help us," Henry says. Cox looks at the firestorm and estimates it will reach the crowd's current position in no more than 15 minutes, perhaps as few as 3. It's not a fire or an explosion. In this closed and already polluted environment, it is a cataclysm. "Sir, I cannot, he says. Before Henry can reply, Joe Boxer grabs his arm. He is gibbering. Quit it, Joe, Henry says. There's nowhere to run and nothing to do but pray. But Joe Boxer does not pray. He is still holding his stupid little hock-shop pistol. And after a final crazed look at the oncoming inferno, he puts the gun to his temple like a man playing Russian roulette. Henry makes a grab for it, but is too late. Boxer pulls the trigger. Nor does he die at once, although a gout of blood flies from the side of his head. He staggers away, waving the stupid little pistol like a handkerchief, screaming. Then he falls to his knees, throws his hands up once to the darkening sky like a man in the grip of a Godhead revelation, and collapses face first on the broken white line of the highway. Henry turns his stunned face back to Colonel Cox, who is simultaneously 3 feet and 1,000,000 miles away. I'm so sorry, my friend, Cox says. Pamela Chen stumbles up. The bus, she screams to Henry over the building roar. We have to take the bus and drive straight through it. It's our only chance. Henry knows this is no chance at all, but he nods, gives Cox a final look. Cox will never forget the cop's hellish, despairing eyes. Takes Pammy Chen's hand and follows her to bus 19 as the smoky blackness races toward them. The fire reaches downtown and explodes along Main Street like a blowtorch in a pipe. The Peace Bridge is vaporized. Big Jim and Carter cringe in the fallout shelter as the town hall implodes above them. The PD sucks its brick walls in, then spews them high into the sky. The statue of Lucien Calvert is uprooted from its base in War Memorial Plaza. Lucien flies into the burning black with his rifle bravely raised. On the library lawn, the Halloween dummy with the jolly top hat and the garden trowel hands goes up in a sheet of flame. A great whooshing noise, it sounds like God's own vacuum cleaner, has arisen as the oxygen-hungry fire sucks in good air to fill its single poisonous lung. The buildings along Main Street explode, one after another, tossing their boards and goods and shingles and glass into the air like confetti on New Year's Eve. The abandoned movie house, Sanders' Hometown Drug, Burpee's department store, the gas and grocery, the bookstore, the flower shop, the barber shop. In the funeral parlor, the most recent additions to the Roll of the Dead begin roasting in their metal lockers like chickens in a Dutch oven. The fire finishes its triumphant run down Main Street by engulfing Food City, then rolls onward toward Dippers, where those still in the parking lot scream and clutch at each other. Their last sight on earth is of a firewall 100 yards high running eagerly to meet them like Albion to his beloved. Now the flames are rolling down the main roads, boiling their tar into soup. At the same time it is spreading into Eastchester, snacking on both yuppie homes and the few yuppies cowering inside. Michaela Burpee will soon run for her cellar, but too late. Her kitchen will explode around her, and her last sight on earth will be her Amana refrigerator melting. The soldiers standing by the Tarker-Chester border, closest to the origin of this catastrophe, stumble backward as the fire beats impotent fists against the dome, turning it black. The soldiers feel the heat bake through, raising the temperature 20 degrees in seconds, crisping the leaves on the nearest trees. One of them will later say, "It was like standing outside a glass ball with a nuclear explosion inside of it." Now the people cowering against the dome begin to be bombarded by dead and dying birds as the fleeing sparrows, robins, grackles, crows, gulls, and even geese slam against the dome they so quickly learn to avoid. And across Dinsmore's field comes a stampede of the town's dogs and cats. There are also skunks, woodchucks, porcupines. Deer leap among them and several clumsily galloping moose. And of course Alden Dinsmore's cattle, eyes rolling and mooing their distress. When they reach the dome, they crash against it. The lucky animals die. The unlucky ones lie sprawled on pincushions of broken bones, barking and squealing and meowing and bellowing. Ollie Dinsmore sees Dollie, the beautiful brown Swiss who once won him a 4-H blue ribbon. His mother named her, thought Ollie and Dollie was just so cute. Dollie gallops heavily toward the dome with somebody's Weimaraner nipping at her legs, which are already bloody. She hits the barrier with a crunch he can't hear over the oncoming fire. Except in his mind he can hear it. And somehow, seeing the equally doomed dog pounce on poor Dollie and begin ripping at her defenseless udder, is even worse than finding his father dead. The sight of the dying cow that was once his darling breaks the boy's paralysis. He doesn't know if there's even the slightest chance of surviving this terrible day, but he suddenly sees two things with utter clarity. One is the oxygen tank with his dead father's Red Sox cap hung on it. The other is Grampy Tom's oxygen mask dangling from the hook of the bathroom door. As Ollie runs for the farm where he's lived his whole life, the farm that will soon cease to exist, he has only one completely coherent thought: the potato cellar. Buried under the barn and running beneath the hill behind it, the potato cellar may be safe. The expatriates are still standing at the edge of the orchard. Barbie hasn't been able to make them hear him, let alone move them. Yet he must get them back to the farmhouse and the vehicles. Soon. From here they have a panoramic view of the whole town, and Barbie is able to judge the fire's course the way a general might judge the most likely route of an invading army by aerial photographs. It's sweeping southeast, and may stay on the western side of the Prestille. The river, although dry, should still serve as a natural fire break. The explosive windstorm the fire has generated will also help to keep it from the town's northernmost quadrant. If the fire burns all the way to where the dome borders on Castle Rock and Motton, the heel and soul of the boot, then those parts of Chester's Mill bordering on TR-90 and northern Harlow may be saved. From fire, at least. But it's not fire that concerns him. What concerns him is that wind. He feels it now, rushing over his shoulders and between his spread legs hard enough to ripple his clothes and blow Julia's hair around her face. It's rushing away from them to feed the fire. And because the mill is now an almost completely closed environment, there will be very little good air to replace what is being lost. Barbie has a nightmare image of goldfish floating dead on the surface of an aquarium from which all the oxygen has been exhausted. Julia turns to him before he can grab her and points at something below. A figure trudging along Black Ridge Road, pulling a wheeled object. From this distance, Barbie can't tell if the refugee is a man or a woman, and it doesn't matter. Whoever it is will almost certainly die of asphyxiation long before reaching the highland. He takes Julia's hand and puts his lips to her ear. "We have to go. Grab Piper and have her grab whoever's next to her. Everybody." "What about him?" she shouts, still pointing to the trudging figure. It might be a child's wagon he or she's pulling. It's loaded with something that must be heavy because the figure is bent over and moving very slowly. Barbie has to make her understand because time has grown short. "Never mind him. We're going back to the farmhouse. Now. Everybody joins hands so nobody gets left behind." She tries to turn and look at him, but Barbie holds her still. He wants her ear, literally, because he has to make her understand. "If we don't go now, it may be too late. We'll run out of air." On Route 117, Velma Winter leads a parade of fleeing vehicles in her Datsun truck. All she can think about is the fire and smoke filling the rearview mirror. She's doing 70 when she hits the dome, which she has in her panic forgotten completely. Just another bird, in other words. This one on the ground. The collision occurs at the same spot where Billy and Wanda DeBeck, Nora Robichaux, and Elsa Andrews came to grief a week before, shortly after the dome came down. The engine of Velma's light truck shoots backward and tears her in half. Her upper body exits through the windshield, trailing intestines like party streamers, and splatters against the dome like a juicy bug. It is the start of a 12-vehicle pileup in which many die. The majority are only injured, but they will not suffer long. Henrietta and Petra feel the heat wash against them. So do all the hundreds pressed against the dome. The wind lifts their hair and ruffles clothes that will soon be burning. "Take my hand, honey," Henrietta says, and Petra does. They watch the big yellow bus make a wide, drunken turn. It totters along the ditch, barely missing Richie Killian, who first dodges away and then leaps nimbly forward, grabbing onto the back door as the bus goes by. He lifts his feet and squats on the bumper. "I hope they make it," Petra says. "So do I, honey. But I don't think they will." Now some of the deer leaping out of the approaching conflagration are on fire. Henry has taken the wheel of the bus. Pamela stands beside him, holding onto a chrome pole. The passengers are about a dozen townsfolk, most loaded in earlier because they were experiencing physical problems. Among them are Mabel Alston, Mary Lou Costas, and Mary Lou's baby, still wearing Henry's baseball cap. The redoubtable Leo Lemoyne has also gotten on board, although his problem seems to be emotional rather than physical. He is wailing in terror. "Step on it and head north," Pamela shouts. The fire has almost reached them. It's less than 500 yards ahead, and the sound of it shakes the world. "Drive like a motherfucker and don't stop for anything." Henry knows it's hopeless, but because he also knows he would rather go out this way than helplessly cowering with his back to the dome, he yanks on the headlights and gets rolling. Pamela is thrown backward into the lap of Chaz Bender, the teacher. Chaz was helped into the bus when he began to suffer heart palpitations. He grabs Pammy to steady her. There are shrieks and cries of alarm, but Henry barely hears them. He knows he is going to lose sight of the road in spite of the headlights, but so what? As a cop, he has driven this stretch 1,000 times. "Use the force, Luke," he thinks, and actually laughs as he drives into the flaming darkness with the accelerator pedal jammed to the mat. Clinging to the back door of the bus, Richie Killian suddenly cannot breathe. He has time to see his arms catch fire. A moment later, the temperature outside the bus pops to 800 degrees, and he is burned off his perch like a fleck of meat off a hot barbecue grill. The lights running down the center of the bus are on, casting a weak luncheonette at midnight glow over the terrified, sweat-drenched faces of the passengers, but the world outside has turned dead black. Whirlpools of ash eddy in the radically foreshortened beams of the headlights. Henry steers by memory, wondering when the tires will explode beneath him. He's still laughing, although he can't hear himself over the scalded cat screech of 19's engine. He's keeping to the road, there's that much. How long until they break through the other side of the firewall? Is it possible they can break through? He's beginning to think it might be. Good God, how thick can it be? "You're doing it!" Pamela shouts. "You're doing it!" Maybe, Henry thinks, maybe I am. But Christ, the heat. He is reaching for the air conditioning knob, meaning to turn it all the way to max cool, and that's when the windows implode and the bus fills with fire. Henry thinks, no, not when we're so close. But when the charred bus charges clear of the smoke, he sees nothing beyond but a black wasteland. The trees have been burned away to glowing stubs, and the road itself is a bubbling ditch. Then an overcoat of fire drops over him from behind, and Henry Morrison knows no more. 19 skids from the remains of the road and overturns with flames spewing from every broken window. The quickly blackening message on the back reads, "Slow down, friend. We love our children." Ollie Dinsmore sprints to the barn, wearing Grampy Tom's oxygen mask around his neck and carrying 2 tanks with a strength he never knew he had, the second he spied as he cut through the garage. The boy runs for the stairs that will take him down to the potato cellar. There's a ripping, snarling sound from overhead as the roof begins to burn. On the west side of the barn, the pumpkins also begin to burn, the smell rich and cloying, like Thanksgiving in hell. The fire moves toward the southern side of the dome, racing through the last 100 yards. There is an explosion as Dinsmore's dairy barns are destroyed. Henrietta Clavard regards the oncoming fire and thinks, well, I'm old. I've had my life. That's more than this poor girl can say. "Turn around, honey," she tells Petra, "and put your head on my bosom." Petra Searles turns a tear-stained and very young face up to Henrietta's. "Will it hurt?" "Only for a second, honey. Close your eyes, and when you open them, you'll be bathing your feet in a cool stream." Petra speaks her last words. "That sounds nice." She closes her eyes. Henrietta does the same. The fire takes them. At one second they're there, at the next, gone. Cox is still close on the other side of the dome, and the cameras are still rolling from their safe position at the flea market site. Everyone in America is watching in shocked fascination. The commentators have been stunned to silence, and the only soundtrack is the fire, which has plenty to say. For a moment, Cox can still see the long human snake, although the people who make it up are only silhouettes against the fire. Most of them, like the expatriates on Black Ridge, who are at last making their way back to the farmhouse in their vehicles, are holding hands. Then the fire boils against the dome and they are gone. As if to make up for their disappearance, the dome itself becomes visible, a great charred wall rearing into the sky. It holds most of the heat in, but enough flashes out to turn Cox around and send him running. He tears off his smoking shirt as he goes. The fire has burned on the diagonal Barbie foresaw, sweeping across Chester's Mill from northwest to southeast. When it dies, it will do so with remarkable quickness. What it has taken is oxygen. What it leaves behind is methane, formaldehyde, hydrochloric acid, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and trace gases equally noxious. Also, choking clouds of particulate matter, vaporized houses, trees, and, of course, people. What it leaves behind is poison.